Look at that. Allah. You ready? Could we have everybody move in really close? If there's any carpet in front of you, if you could fill it up, just so we can make room for everybody who's going to be coming in, inshallah. Yeah. Ready? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا
حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدًا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the master of the day of judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the master of the day of judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in his path until the last day. During the time of Hajj, there's people who would come from Yemen to perform the pilgrimage. When they would go forth on this journey of Hajj, they would come without any provisions with them. And when they were asked about undertaking this journey with no provisions, they would say that they have their reliance upon Allah. And they set forth carrying nothing. There's no obligation when you perform Umrah or Hajj to go visit the city of Medina, but out of an adab and etiquette for the Prophet ﷺ, the Hujjaj will go to Medina to honor the rights that our Prophet has over us. These people from Yemen who would go for Hajj without provisions, it is said that when they would get to Medina, they would then have to beg in the streets of Medina for support. And Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Al-Baqarah, when He speaks about the Hajj, the pilgrimage, in response to this, He says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ زَادِ التَّقْوَى, that take provisions on your journey, and the best of provisions is taqwa. May Allah make us from the muttaqeen. And then He says to close out the verse, have taqwa of me, ya ulul albab, O people of reason. The recognition of our role as travelers in this world that we spoke about in last week's khutbah, كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر السبيل, that be in this world as if you are a stranger or a traveler. Synergize with the realities of conversations that are happening that much more frequently as we move from the month of Rajab into the month of Sha'ban. May Allah make all of it blessed for us and enable us to reach the month of Ramadan and take benefit from that blessed month as well. This notion of journeying and the provisions that we move forward, rooted in this reality that the best of provision that you can take with yourself on the journey that you are on every day of your life is going to be this thing of taqwa. May Allah make us from the muttaqeen. Can we have everybody move in really close? If we can fill up any place where the carpets are empty, we'd appreciate it. And that sense of wakefulness and consciousness that's rooted in a divine imperative, if we were to give it a baseline definition, Tawbah, for example, is if I screw up and make a mistake, I fall into the hole. Tawbah is the mechanism that gets me out of the hole when I fall into it. Taqwa, that consciousness, that wakefulness, rooted in the presence of the divine, that's the thing that's going to tell me the hole is coming before I fall into it. To be ready, it's right there in front of you. To have a sense that is not rooted in trepidation or intimidation, but with a sense of strength and energy that I move forward and journey, not in default settings, the way the rest of creation does, but I allow for myself to aspire to be from amongst those that Allah is saying when He addresses them as Ya ulul albab, O people of lub. Your heart has layers to it, the spiritual heart. And our understanding is that the spiritual heart has a link to the physical heart. The outer layer of the heart is what we call the sadr. This is where when we say, الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ, that shaitan, he whispers into the sadr of humanity. May Allah protect us from that. That's the outer layer. Shaitan is coming to knock. You decide if you're going to let him in or not. And his access points are going to be your insecurities and your vulnerabilities, not mine. I got my own stuff going on. The next layer is what we call the qalb. That is the essence of the spiritual heart. The third layer within that is what we call the fu'ad. This is a seat of emotions and feelings. The mother of Moses, when she places her child into the river, the feelings she feels in the verse are described to be in her fu'ad. And the fourth and the most inner part to this is the lub. And the lub is likened in relation to the rest of the heart to the relationship that the Kaaba has to the city of Mecca, or like your pupil has to the rest of the eye. It's the place that the light enters through. May Allah make us people of light. And the relationship between these two things can't be undermined, because if you're not aspiring to be a person of taqwa and to want to be really a person of taqwa, I don't want to fall in the hole and then figure out a way to get out of it. I want to know that it's coming, and I'm going to stand in defiance of it, overcome it, and get to where I need to get to in the steps that are coming thereafter. It has a relationship to the heart, because this is what our Prophet ﷺ tells us. At-taqwa ha-huna, pointing to the heart thrice. That's where it is. And as you are now about a month away from this month of Ramadan, may Allah accept all of our actions prior to and enable us to get as ready can be. You got to think about how all of it has to do not with anything else other than just that piece of you that is your heart. I can have aspirations that are attached to things that are dunyawi. You want to have wealth, you can go and have wealth. This is not a religion that is anti-wealth. It just tells you not to have this love of wealth that so much of creation has right now. You want to be somebody who is known for things, ideally be known for something good. It's not hard to have your name known. You could go out and do ridiculousness, and people will plaster your names across all kinds of headlines. But you want to be somebody who's also bold enough to say that I have an aspiration to be a person of taqwa. I want to be a person who taps into the lub, to have reason and discernment that is rooted in real basira and firasa, a vision of the heart, an intuition of the heart. As the Prophet ﷺ tells us, ittaqu, have taqwa, be mindful of what? Firasat al-mu'min, the intuition of the believer. فَإِنَّهُ, indeed he, يَنْظُرُ, sees from what? The nur of Allah, the light of Allah. The rituals and practices that we are going to ideally engage in, if we have the capacity, some of us might not, but most of us in this room have the physical health to be able to fast. May Allah accept it from us. Some people have conditions that will prevent them from it, that are chronic or temporary. And that's a reality, and as a community, we want to have consciousness of this. But in understanding, there's a reason why. As the Prophet made these du'as, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab wa Shaban wa balighna Ramadan, that, oh Allah, make a blessed for us the month of Rajab and the month of Shaban, and allow for us to reach the month of Ramadan. That the companions said that they saw the Prophet fasting more in the month of Shaban than any other month other than Ramadan. Why is he doing that? Because he's not making a dua that is then devoid of actions that become a mechanism for the actualization of the dua. You want to have the barakah, then you got to take the asbab, the means that come your way, and the openings, and you got to put in some effort to get some of that as well. You don't go on Hajj without provision. It is written in the Quran, tazawwadu, that you make the journey with your provision. That's not healthy reliance on the divine. And at some level, the maturation of a community necessitates individuals looking inwardly and saying that I am now not going to engage in something that's transactional, but because I have the blessing of able to just sit here and not offer anything back, that's all the more reason that I should be giving whatever I can. And living to the best of my potentials and the best of my capacities, and no longer being in a place where I'm afraid. That's why taqwa is the best of provisions, because it doesn't just make you aware of what's happening out there or around you, it gives you the opportunity for an awareness of who you actually are and what it is that you can become. That I am not afraid today or any longer to meet the person I can become tomorrow. And you got to break down not a recognition that is just if I asked you to tell me the things you dislike about yourself, you could write pages and pages. Be bold enough to see yourself the way Allah sees you. But if I was to ask you, tell me the things that make you beautiful, not by a supremacist whiteness understanding of beauty, but a beauty that is about the inward and the outward, a lot of you wouldn't know what to say. And it's not only, but also because of internalized racisms and self-loathings and self-deprecations that society teaches us to be submissive to. But for some of us, we don't want to admit our beauty, because the minute that we actually acknowledge the spiritual gifts that we've been given, we're going to have to confront the idea as to why we're not using them in the way that the one who gave it to us wants us to be using it. Ya ulul albab, O people of reason, start to think not from your stomachs, because it's never been about empty stomachs. Ramadan has always been about full hearts. And to be in a place where you want to aspirationally have intuition and insight and foresight, that you want to have an awakened heart that is the means through which you perceive and synthesize everything that's coming through all of your organs of sensory perception. A dilution that exists in the rest of the calendar year as we walk through spaces and spaces that are purposely meant to inculcate within us not the presence of consciousness, but the absence of consciousness. You move in so many ways where there are arenas after arenas where people are just engaging in default modes of existence. You take a breath and you think about the journey that's ahead. And the Quran is true whether we want to buy into it or not. The best of provisions on your journey is taqwa. May Allah make us from the muttaqeen. The Quran, when it talks about itself, it talks to us about itself in the prism of taqwa, in addition to many other things, but also taqwa. Fasting is written for you so that perhaps you might attain taqwa, the capacity to be somebody who is generous in every sense of generosity, wealth, affluence, influence, skills, volunteerism, all of these things, they are attributed consequently to the presence of taqwa. The purposeful nature of going to seek and acquire it is not that I just mindlessly engage in a practice the way I've done it year after year after year, but with a distinct intentionality. I'm going to ready myself now because it's getting closer, and it's for me to decide how it is that I'm going to take it to its full advantage. If your Prophet fasted in Sha'ban more than any other month other than Ramadan, why are you not going to fast in Sha'ban? Why? And not in a place where you're going to prove to anybody anything or get minor appeasement of the nafs, so every other person that you come into interaction with, you're going to tell them that I'm fasting today. But for a sense of recognition rooted in the idea of what all of this is about subjectively to yourself. That says, I see what happens to people when they are so attached to consumption and consumption alone, and they are attached to the centering of themselves in a way that is deeply unhealthy and problematic. And then I see a man, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the epitome of balance and contentment, who cried when he was sad and had grief and still had balance, because those are both real things that can coexist. Who was happy and had joy, who had tribulation as much as he had triumph. He was in a place where the reality of how he engaged was something that, despite the stresses and burdens of the world, he was still exerting gentleness, compassion, and mercy. And he fasted in the month that took place before Ramadan. Just because everybody else doesn't do it doesn't mean that that's the reason why you don't. It's all the more reason as to why you should do it. And rooted in what it is telling us is the acquisition that can only be yielded from the implementation of the act itself. I want to be a person of taqwa. I don't want to anymore be a person who only thinks through my stomach and sexual organs. I don't want to be a person anymore who only thinks through my fears and anxieties. I want to be somebody who is not subservient to my body and anything else that it pushes upon me that needs immediate satisfaction and gratification. I want to think through my heart. I want to be a wakeful heart, and I want that to be what it is that I see this world through, the way that a believer is not afraid to see the world through. And then living in the sense of a journey that's ahead that thinks on this day that I am blessed to experience, the Mubarak day of Jummah, what am I carrying forth with myself in terms of provision? And if I'm low at the end of Taqwa, then I got this month where I could pack in a lot of it, not with the intent that I let it go the very next day, nor do I hold on to it in a fleeting way. But the things that I learn about myself, I don't pretend like they don't exist the day that Eid falls upon me, and I go back immediately to what it was that I was before the month's advent and my blessing to be able to experience it. Fast in this month that is upon us before Ramadan comes, so that you don't spend the first 3 or 4 days of Ramadan weaning yourself off of caffeines and nicotines and other things that when you don't have them, it puts you in a bad mood. It's foolish. It's telling you what you think about the opportunity that's ahead of you, that you know this about yourself. These are not days that you want to get the haram out of your system. Ramadan is coming, so I won't be able to do this when those nights are upon me. You shouldn't be doing them in these nights also. But when you think about it, not at a level that is elementary, but at a level that is reality, all it's doing is putting more blocks on your inner self, and it's taking away from the opportunity to achieve the aspiration that says when Allah is talking about the ulul albab, that I could potentially be amongst those because I'm just stuck in the dunya. I want just what's here as opposed to what is hereafter. The temporary is more satisfying to me than what is eternal. And those are choices that individually you can go and make. We live in a city that is not like other places. There are so many of us that flock and frequent the streets of every block, literally thousands and thousands. Nobody knows what you do when you are by yourself. They don't. There are numerous times in the daylight hours or even late at night when you are awake and maybe others are asleep that no one's eyes are upon you other than the divine's. And that's where taqwa kicks in. Not the persona that presents itself in public spaces or even the reality of who I might be in a place of privacy behind closed doors in my home, but in the most secret of situations when it's just me and God seeing me. Where does the taqwa kick in that moment? Where is the consciousness, the wakefulness? The cultivation of it within us is something that's important to understand, that it has capacity to increase and decrease. Just like anything else that you might have within you that has this capacity. You only sleep 3 hours a night for the next 5 or 6 nights. Frustrating situations are going to be more frustrating because your energy levels are low. Your brain hasn't cleaned itself out from what it can through sleep and rest. And you're depleted. And there's other things that we engage in that their purpose is to deplete us of our consciousness. Devices that are not just about simple distractions that divert our eyes and our ears from seeing and hearing when somebody is talking to us and we're responding in a mode that lacks etiquette, but is meant to take hold of your heart and distract you from things that are taking place around you. The understanding and the realities of what it is that we can bring ourselves to, because I don't want to be the person anymore who walks by somebody and they clearly have on their face signs and indications of grief and pain. But I'm so stuck on something else that I'm not even paying attention. And I contribute to the erasure of their narratives and what it is that they are experiencing. When people ask questions about how is it fundamentally possible that we make up 1/5 of the world's population, when people ask questions about how is it fundamentally possible that there is not a city, likely, definitively a state in this country, that there is not at least some presence of Muslims, let alone many Muslims. And the notion is not to root our experience in negatives. There are amazing things happening in many communities across this country and the world, including our own. May Allah increase us and make us a continued source of benefit for His creation. But when you think about why it hits a ceiling, everybody's got their mosque. Some people built a school for people, and then they stopped being creative. You go to most masjids, they're doing the same summer camp for kids every single place. All in survival mode, all reactive. Why are there not more that are putting people who are mental health professionals on their staffs? Why are there not more that are building food pantries? Why are there not more who are creating free clinics? There's a lot of you who are in this room who are either aspiring to work within healthcare or work within healthcare. You have capacities. But the ability to just be wakeful and mindful, to be conscious, is not that I just know that you exist, but I can feel what it is through that consciousness, empathetically, what it might be that you're going through. So hadith that tell us that you didn't give me food or drink or visit me when I was sick, O son of Adam, when we stand in front of Allah on that day. May Allah make it easy for us. And they say, you are Rabbul Alameen. How is it that we could do these things for you? My servant was hungry and you did not feed them. They were sick and you did not visit them. What's the missing gap? It's not that I just know that people are ill, but my consciousness is not in the place that it can be, that then enables me to fully experience with an actual understanding of being from the muttaqeen and the ulul albab, that how do I fit into that person's existence? You don't want to have to be hungry in order to understand what hunger means, because we're going to go through it, a lot of us, in a voluntary mode. There's a lot of people who have to live it every single day in an involuntary capacity. What is diluting my ability to love my sister or brother in such a way that I don't have to just engage in rhetoric that explains the purpose of certain things in a way that gives me appeasement. Somebody asks you why you fast. The idea, if you really buy into it, so that I can understand what it's like for people who don't have food, take it to its next step. One, everybody fasts, whether they have food or not. So the reason for fasting isn't so that we know what it's like to not have food, because there's people who don't have food and they also fast. But if you are saying that that's the reason as to why I fast, why are you being made aware of what it's like to not have food? It's not so then you don't go and help people who don't have food. It should be so that you then go and help people who don't have food. You change your eating habits, your consumption habits, because you now have taqwa. You have consciousness of capacity that says, you know what? I just went through a month where I didn't really eat so much, which means I probably didn't spend so much, which also means I have more that I can give and do for others. That's taqwa. It doesn't stop at the end of the month. You take it to its logical conclusion, rooted in the idea that there are people who have nothing to eat. And I'm not going to pat myself on the back for the achievement that I achieve the same way every single year and then go back to just being the way that I was once it was all done. So you want to change it up a little bit. Fast this month of Sha'ban. Get up for suhoor. If it's going to be hard for you to wake up before Fajr to have a meal, these are the days that you start to practice that, so that when it really counts in Ramadan, you're not going in cold, you've gotten it done. You know there's going to be so many things that have to have our involvement as a blessing for us to assist people in their time of need. You start thinking about it now. Saving $1 today means that somebody else will likely have food later on. But if I wait in a mindless way that doesn't even allow for me to understand at this juncture of my life whether I'm someone who's obligated to give zakah and how do I even do it, where is the presence of taqwa in that spiritual exercise? And where is the presence of love that understands that my giving is not just for me, but it's for people who, if I'm the means through which Allah is providing for them, what other station would I want to have? Try to be the best in all of your industries and ambitions. This is what ihsan is. May Allah make us from the muhsineen, people of true excellence. But the foundational blocks that are built upon values in our religion that are purposely rooted in the engagements of things that are simple, you just have to want that for yourself. You have to want to be somebody who experiences it and feels it and then decides upon it differently. As we ready ourselves for what lies ahead, all you got to do is try your best. And be bold enough to ask the question, is what I'm putting into this thing right now actually the best that I can be putting into it? If the answer is no, that's only okay if it brings about some semblance of adaptation and change. And if the answer is yes, good, then keep doing what you're doing. But we're blessed and privileged to be here on this day of Jummah. And Allah has given us opportunity to breathe more breaths in this world with a sense of wakefulness, consciousness rooted in the hearts. Just ask yourself, why did He give that to you? And are you using it in the ways that really make sense and have an indication that there is going to be a moment where we have to stand in front of Him to answer for all of it? وَتَزَوَّدُوا, the 197th verse of Surah Baqarah. Get your provisions for your journey. وَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. And the best of provision is taqwa. May Allah make us from the muttaqeen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدًا عبده ورسوله. Many of you likely heard the news of the airline crash that took place in the Washington, D.C. area. And amongst the casualties of that crash was a dear sister who was part of our community here by the name of Asra Hussein. May Allah grant her ease. Her husband, Hamad, 25 years as a widow now. His wife, 26. And I know all of you don't know them, but they have many friends, many acquaintances, many relatives who are part of this community. They were here for some years before they moved to DC. And I reached out to my brother Hamad to let him know that we're thinking about him and holding him and his family in our hearts. I said, whatever we can do for you, let me know. Because I can't imagine what it must feel like to be going through what he's going through right now. And that's why you have to understand what it is that we're talking about and why these are not things that you just do because somebody told you to do them or you inherit them, but they are actual practices and exercises that should give us wakefulness. He said, just ask people to make dua for us, to pray for us. There's not things that we can particularly do to keep pain from being experienced in moments that are sensible to respond to, that are painful. He's gonna be sad, he's gonna have grief. I've met her parents and others. Our brother Ziad is related to them. But our relationship to what this religion teaches us Muslims should be like is going to be the variable that contributes to whether they go through that sadness alone or they actually go through it with all of us carrying them in our hearts. And so remember her. May Allah raise her from the shuhada. Remember their family. May Allah grant them patience and ease and the best of reunions with their loved one in the highest levels of Jannah. And recognize that you don't need anybody's permission to do good. You don't have to know her or any of the people that we mention in the dua request emails that we send out. You don't have to know any of the people who are going to be recipient of the consequences of your good works. You just have to do what's right because it's the right thing to do. That's what our religion teaches us to aspire towards as people who submit not to anything other than the only one who's worthy for us to submit to. That is our Creator, Allah, who's looking for a reason to catch us in a moment of mercy. And you want to just take advantage of every opening that comes. And so here's one. Even if you don't know her, or you don't know him, or know any of them, make sure you take a moment to just sit and pray for her maghfirah. These were beautiful people. And I can't imagine what it is that he's going through right now, or her parents are going through, or any of them are going through. But I do know that the du'as we make will be a source of relief and healing. And if you know them or know of them, or anybody that you know who's going through anything, use the opportunities to reach out to them. Let them know you're thinking about them. You show up for them. Your heart will benefit the most from that. Last week, I also sent out a message that I'm sure some of you have received in relation to my transition from my role here at our Islamic Center at New York University. If it's the first time that some of you are hearing about it, I don't mean to just bring it out in that way. But from the last week until literally before walking into the room for Jummah, people have just been asking me, are you really leaving? Is it true? Is it something that is actually happening? My intention is to transition out of this role by the end of the summer, August, in full capacity. It's a decision that I've been deliberating for not just some months, but a couple of years, really reflecting on what my own capacity is to contribute more to building what it is that we're building in specific here, or has the time come for now movement and transition? Because there's so much more to build for our community that what we can do here has reached kind of a ceiling. And where I've landed is that it's time to now go to make sure we continue to build more. It's a unique situation serving a community that is 10, 15,000 people, because a lot of you know each other in different pockets, and I can't say or claim that I know every one of you, but I do know that a good number of you know me because of the role that I'm in. And whether we have a deep relationship or we have a relationship that is merely acquainted, and I'm sorry if I haven't done everything I could to get to know you better, you should know that the decision I make is not a personal decision that is only about me, but it's really about what I firmly believe is best for this community. Many people said to me in text messages and emails that this is the end of an era. I don't even know what you're saying. But aside from the overt dramaticness of the language, we're just getting started on what we're doing. It's not an end. It's a beginning to ensure that what it is that we build is going to have longevity and benefit generations that come for years and years after any one of us is here. And when the time comes for you all to help make that a reality, we'll reach out and let you know. People ask a lot of different questions that we'll give answers to over the coming weeks. But the idea is to root the love that we have in a trust that when it makes sense to make indications on certain things, then we'll give those indications through announcements. I don't have a clear understanding on everything specifically that I'm going to be doing, but I can tell you that I'm not going to be doing things that are not involving what our community's growth is attached to. People ask about the relationship between what we do here on campus and other projects that are being built out and facilities that are being acquired. These are two completely autonomous entities and projects. What happens here will continue to happen here. There will always be Muslim students at New York University, and we owe a lot to them, especially those of us who are not students, because they have let us for many years share the spaces that were theirs. And even if you can say there is mutual benefit, there is a much needed sense of gratitude that has to be expressed. And I love each of you, but especially those of you who are students. You have no idea how hard it is to think about leaving this role. And it's not something I tend to talk about again and again and again, but just because people were asking me questions, I want to give answers. Wherever I end up or whatever I do in relation to this space and other projects that I'm blessed to be a part of, relevant to our community, any of you ever need anything, you reach out and you let me know. But whatever we build going forward is also so that you all who are students here will benefit as well. And understanding that we couldn't have done this without any of you. When I worked at Princeton University for a year, at the end of that year, it was a conundrum for me. I was 23, 24 years old. I went to Princeton, the first Jummah khutbah I gave, there was 6 people at the Jummah khutbah. Let alone having 6 people at a Jummah khutbah, which in some fiqh opinions doesn't even count as Jummah. If you've ever tried to talk to 6 people who are all sitting in separate parts of a room, it's a very awkward interaction. A young woman took her shahada at Princeton, and there was nobody there to celebrate with her. I brought her here so that people could be with her at that moment. At the end of the year, we had now well over 100 people at Jummah prayers at Princeton. A young woman in my last week there took her shahada, and the room was filled with people. When I went to notify the people who were my supervisors that I would no longer be there, they had extended a full-time opportunity to me, and I said, I need to be in New York, that's where my heart is. They said to me that, why do you look so upset? And I was 24, and I said, I don't know what's gonna happen here if I leave. We've had so much growth and we've had so much increase. And my supervisor, the dean of religious life, not with aggressiveness, but with care, said to me something that was so important at that moment. Khalid, if you leave, we will find somebody to replace you. And it made me realize that whatever we build here cannot be built upon one person's presence alone. And you have to understand that this is the culmination of thousands of people that didn't start when I started working here, but 5 Muslim students founded this space in 1978, and for decades, people struggled against systems that were rooted in supremacy, trying to the best of their ability to ensure that there was some type of resources for Muslims to access and not forego parts of their identity. And he said it to me, and it stuck really well. And so I can go for Umrah for 2 weeks, and things happen, they don't stop. I can leave and Jummah still happens. My father can get deeply sick and I'm not here for months in a row and nothing falls apart because we're building with excellence and we're building with the sense that people can be interchangeable. I'm going to make sure that whatever it is that we grow into, it has a consideration of what it is that is best for our community, both in the immediate and in the long term. And when the opportunity comes for you all to step up and help us get it done, we're going to need every single person to help in every way possible with their skills, with their du'as, with their dollars, to make sure that we are building for ourselves what we cannot expect anyone else to build for us. As I get information more about what things will look like in the immediate, I will share it with you all. I would ask you to just be mindful of how you talk about things and share things in ways that add to speculative understandings that are not helpful to anybody. I said this to some of the halaqah groups that I was leading this week. If you know something about what my life is going to look like in the coming years, please let me know, because I don't know. This is definitely not the end of something. We're just being bold to build bigger for ourselves. And you have to understand that that's what the intention is. And inshallah ta'ala, Allah will give us tawfiq in all of these endeavors, including the ones that are going to be coming in the near future for this community. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi, if our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here, only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Increase us in courage, compassion, and confidence. Protect us from affliction, anxiety, and anguish. Remove from our hearts any feelings of bitterness, jealousy, animosity, or envy towards any of your creation. Grant us hearts that are filled with understanding and hope, hearts that are drawn towards things of real goodness and beauty, hearts that find themselves deep in your remembrance, for indeed in your remembrance do hearts find rest. We ask, Ya Allah, that you make us from amongst those who take full advantage of these coming days of Sha'ban. Make us ready, Ya Allah, to meet that blessed month of Ramadan in the best of ways, and to take from it all that it is that we can for ourselves and for all those that we hold near and dear to our hearts. Give us strength, Ya Rabbi, in a world that is ever increasing and making us exhausted and weary. Help us to deepen in our sincerity through moments of selflessness, and give us openings to be a means of benefit and relief for your creation. When we are tired and dejected, Ya Allah, send us those who will uplift our spirits, those who will help us to remember who it is that we actually are, those who will help us to remember you in the presence of your mercy, the presence of your love. Protect this community always, Ya Rab, and benefit us with the tawfiq to be a source of increase and good for your creation for generations and generations to come. Rise up from amongst those of us who are here and those of us who will be here in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. Those whose hearts are filled with nothing other than love for one another and love for you, so that we can build for ourselves what no one else will build for us. Replace any feelings of intimidation with feelings of courage, and help us to always remember that all it is that you ask of us is to try our best. Make us those who are no longer afraid to embrace the luminosity that exists within us. But let this day of Jummah not end, or any tomorrow that we are blessed to be in this world, without us utilizing the gifts and everything you have endowed us with to bring benefit to ourselves and others in your creation, both in this world and in the next. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقيم الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
حق لا إله إلا الله. استووا استقيموا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله الله أكبر استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله اللهم أنت السلام
Once you're done praying your sunnahs, there's two people who are going to be taking their shahada, so if you can stick around to be a part of that, we appreciate it. Sunday judgment today is on the IC. Please do give whatever you can. And we have some events and programs that are happening. The QR codes are up on the screen behind you. So please do try to participate, especially in the Black Muslim Symposium that's going to be happening not this weekend, but next weekend. The tickets for that will go very fast. They've got an amazing speaker lineup, so definitely want to check that out, inshallah. But once you're done praying your sunnahs, we'll walk our brother Sean and our sister Danielle through their shahada, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام
I'm not from here, but I feel sad to me.
Don't worry, baby. Not to feel sad, man. It's good things coming, inshallah. What's your name?
Arslan.
Arslan?
Yeah.
How'd you end up here today?
I'm here on vacation, but I'm from the University of Florida.
Oh, nice.
So I just